seeing that a lot of Black people have lost consciousness, and you made a great point about Negro consciousness. We can't use the other derogatory. Let's just call it sellout consciousness, right? And we have a situation going on right now on Black YouTube where there's a YouTuber by the name of JustPearlyThings. She has disrespected our people in a major way, and you see Blacks defending that behavior, even telling her not to apologize. But how do you break down this particular mindset of how Blacks can look down upon themselves and encourage other groups to continue to demean them?
Yeah. So when you and I were breaking this down offline, what I was pointing out to you was that what we're seeing is essentially, as a community, we lack political masculinity. And the reason why we lack political masculinity is because in many ways we don't necessarily have racial consciousness, which is necessary to develop that. Black people under the system of racism, white supremacy, are manufactured to have Negro consciousness, which is the opposite of race consciousness, right? So whenever I think of race consciousness, I typically break it down into 5 attributes, right? Because your racial consciousness is a reflection of your race loyalty or your racial loyalty, which is a reflection of your racial pride, which is a reflection of your racial dignity, which is a reflection of your racial knowing, which is a reflection of your racial memory, right? So whenever we're having these conversations about, on code or off code behavior, what we're speaking about is essentially violations to racial solidarity. But you're never going to seek to be in solidarity with members of your group if you have Negro consciousness, right? And Negro consciousness just means the absence of racial memory, right? When Carter G. Woodson wrote his book, The Miseducation of the Negro, this is what he was talking about in terms of Negro consciousness, right? So Negroes don't operate with a group consciousness. They don't have a race-first consciousness. They have a self-first individual consciousness, right? But when you have a situation where you have conflict between groups, you often end up going against your group in order to advance your own individual or economic interests. And the way that's often been reflected historically is, Black folks look to side with so-called good white folk. Yeah, I'm saying, good white people who they get some type of benefit from, whether that be economic benefit or political benefit. And they tend to do so against their group, right? If you were to compare, let's say, Black America, which is a particular group of Black people, right? If you were to compare like the level of racial consciousness that we have versus a group that's, known as the untouchables, right? Anytime that somebody says something that's so-called anti-Semitic, you'll never, ever, ever hear anyone in their group coming out to defend the person that says something that's anti-Semitic, right? But within our group, because we don't have that racial solidarity, as soon as someone says something that is anti-Black, you'll find numerous Negroes coming out to defend or apologize for that person, or vouch for their character. No, she's not racist. She's not racist. I know real racism. You'll find numerous Negroes doing that because they find benefit in doing so.
Let me ask you a question, because what I've seen online, because online is largely an easier community to access, and some of these people don't even know the white individual in question personally. There's absolutely nothing that they could gain from that. I can honestly see leaders in the Black community are, let's just say Eric Dyson, who's I believe is somebody that can do things you're talking about. But when you look at somebody on the internet who has no actual ties to the individual that they're defending, how is it possible that they can actually have this Negro consciousness when they're not going to benefit from anything from this individual, even a subscriber or a commenter defending that behavior? Why is it that these people still behave in that when there's no incentive?
Oh no, no, I would absolutely disagree with that. There's plenty of incentive, right? So first and foremost, I'm almost reluctant to center the the Just Pasty chick or whatever her name is. I'm
Mhm.
reluctant to center her in a conversation about what's happening in the Black community, right? Because for me, whenever I'm having this conversation, we should be talking about the behavior within the
Mhm.
Black community, right? She
Okay.
should be the subject, right? The subject should
Absolutely.
always
Absolutely.
be the behavior that's being demonstrated.
Right.
However, if we're examining the
Mhm.
behavior, right,
Mhm.
because this particular individual has such a huge platform and has
Okay.
access to, resources, know-how, capital, you're always going to find Black people who see value in that and value in having a relationship and or connection to that. And therefore, in order to protect that perceived value and access to it, they'll always, side with that particular person. You know what I mean? There was a notable live streamer, pretty big in the Black manosphere, that,
Mhm.
that essentially came out and gave the typical, you know, uh, whenever a white person gets called to the carpet, you're always going to find a good Negro or a loyal slave to come forward to vouch for that person's character.
Mhm.
And as I was listening to this particular streamer who was vouching, for just Pacey things after she made
Mhm.
the comment about slavery being embellished, which is
Mhm.
disrespectful, and
Yes.
it's anti-black. If
Right.
someone was to say that the Jewish Holocaust, right, was being embellished, you know what I'm saying, it was being overstated, the Jewish community would come out against that person for saying it, but not one Jewish person would come to that person's defense to vouch for their character.
Absolutely.
Like, I know that this is
Absolutely.
a good person, but on our side, we start talking about, hey, I know real racism because I grew up in the South. I mean, and Malcolm X told us that we need to disabuse ourselves of that Negro-like consciousness a long time ago. He said, if you below the Canadian border, stop talking about the South. Anywhere below the Canadian border, you're in the South. You understand what I'm
Okay.
saying? So we like to give passes to so-called white liberal racism because it's less in your face, it's less
Mhm.
aggressive, but racism isn't about individual acts. And there's something about that Negro chip, going back to the miseducation of the Negro, where Carter G. Woodson talked about the back door that they put into the back of our mind. I refer to that as the coon chip today. But
Mhm.
it's often activated whenever we see a white person in distress. I'll give you a perfect example. There was a white police officer who had killed a Black man a few years ago, and there's this scene where she's in the courtroom and she's looking sad, and you see a Black lady cop, a Black lady officer in the courtroom come over and start brushing her hair, and soothing her. And this is what Negroes like to do whenever they see a Black or a white person in distress. If Miss Ann is in distress, the first thing that the chip tells us to do is we got to soothe her. We have to come to her defense. So right now in the Black space online, you see Negroes aggressively attacking other Black people because Black people had the nerve to take issue with the racism of Miss Ann. So that's what we have happening in our community.